Okay, good evening. Thank you for being here this evening. As most of you already know, we've received a court order to keep 30 of our voting sites open until 8 p.m. We've been in the process of contacting all of those sites and the facilities. We have been successful in doing so. We don't anticipate any trouble in having the extended hours at any of our facilities.
Can you talk about everyone behind the scenes? Like, how hard does everyone work, and what exactly goes into the process to make sure we get this right?
We've had hundreds of people working for many, many weeks. And leading into the election with everything that's new this year, it's a tremendous amount of effort that we have with our staff. I have to commend them. It's been a very challenging year, not just with the election support, but with the pandemic. Several challenges that were unexpected, but they've done an excellent job in providing access for voters in Clark County.
Can you talk more about the technical issues earlier?
We did have technical issues that we experienced at sites. The majority of those issues dealt with connectivity and the setup of our poll books where we sign people in to vote.
But not the actual voting machines.
In some cases we had a few issues, very small, but there were some issues with machines.
Are they throughout the day, or was everything in the morning?
It was in the morning. Connectivity is an issue that we experience throughout the day. Much like people who go home after 5, when a majority of the public starts to sign in on their smart devices, there's a slow in the connectivity of all of their devices. We experience that all day long, so it's a challenge that we deal with. We had good admin rover support today. They were able to respond, and we did get all polling places back up and running.
Any other issues with poll observers or anything else? Any other problems you can tell us about?
Nothing out of the ordinary. And again, we have a strong team of admin rovers who travel throughout the valley. We quickly respond. We had a tremendous amount of support from local law enforcement, along with the MAC Center that was open today and the Secretary of State. With the support that we had, we were able to handle all issues.
Joe, talk about how unusual this election year has been, how workers have been dealing with that kind of chaos around it, and also do you have a number of total registered voters who may have voted early in today?
Registered voters leading into Election Day, we had 378,000 early voters, and we had reported a little over 400,000 mail ballots received. We're still in the process of processing some of those, but the challenges that we dealt with were tremendous. The pandemic being one of the most major, and it resulted in what we had to do in the primary election. We made considerable changes to make sure that we had an increase in access. We went from election day polling sites in the primary and one early voting site to 35 sites that were open for 14 days and 125 vote centers that were available today for voting. So putting all that together, getting the poll workers, dealing with the poll worker group that is majority of seniors who are more susceptible to the pandemic was a challenge that we dealt with consistently, but we were successful in getting the workers that we needed. So.
Are you confident all the votes will be counted tonight?
No, absolutely not. We have mail coming in. There are mail ballot drop-off locations at all 125 of our sites, plus the election department, plus the U.S. mail. We're required to wait for those to come in as well. So what you see tonight will be an unofficial report, and it won't be final until November 16th.
Record number of voter turnout percentage-wise tonight?
Today, I don't know if it was a record turnout for the in-person, because it's difficult to gauge because there was drop-off and we don't know how many there are there. But early voting, the mail that we received so far and our in-person early voting was definitely a large increase in what we've seen in the past.
How did lines compare today compared to the primary election?
Well, we're not done yet, so I can't really give you that report. However, during the course of the day, we had lines that were average, I would say. The turnout today, the last time we checked, was at about 68,000, which is a considerable amount lower than what we normally see. Election day, we were prepared to handle well over 200,000 voters on Election Day, but we're not going to get anywhere near that.
Did the extra polling places kind of alleviate that?
Oh, without a doubt. The early voting, we had a full early voting program. In fact, we had 3 more sites this year than we did in 2018, as was required through AB4. And then the vote centers that we put in place, it's 122 more sites, so yes.
So talk about the lawsuit. How is that going to impact voting in Clark County with
Well, the report is going to be later, obviously, and it'll probably affect the whole state because we can't report in any county in the state of Nevada until the Secretary of State has confirmed with us that all voters are done in the entire state of Nevada. So as a result of us staying open till 8 p.m., it's going to slow down the election results coming out.
Will there be police escorts to bring the ballots and the machines here this evening?
Machines do not come back to the polling to the election center. They start being picked up tomorrow. As far as the ballots, they are secured by the 2 team leaders that are assigned at each vote center, and they will be bringing those back tonight with us. But the police escort is for our transport from Trade Drive to Greystone, where we process ballots.
Obviously, it's important on a national level and the state level, but to you specifically on a personal mission, why is it so important to get this right?
Well,
Make sure every vote counts.
sure, it's important that if the general public is not confident in the integrity of the process, if they're not confident that their vote counts, then the election isn't effective. And so we've always worked here. It's been our #1 priority to uphold the integrity in everything that we do. Although we've seen a tremendous increase in the number of mail ballots, we have been doing mail ballots for many years. And so we had to redefine our processes to handle the number of mail ballots. However, we were very comfortable with the process that we had in place.
How are you feeling tonight, Bob?
Great.
Different than years before, or you're always good?
Every presidential election for an election official is the biggest election they've done, especially in a jurisdiction like Clark County where we have continued growth. This is my 8th presidential election, so I would have to say that this has probably been the most difficult election I've ever had to support.
It's your 8th one, but this one seems more contentious. People are really being critical of how voting has been handled, nailing voting, tabulation fraud across the country. Does it have a different feeling to you? What's it been like, kind of being the guy in charge?
Absolutely. The pressure has come from many different groups, both parties, third-party community partners that we have in the community. Everybody was very engaged in this election and wanted to make sure that their vote was going to count and that our processes would hold up with the changes that we've had as a result of the pandemic and going to all mail for all active registered voters. So we have also been doing a tremendous amount of outreach with our general public through PSAs and also in doing several Zoom meetings with different groups to make sure that they were aware of the changes and aware of all of the access that we were working hard to provide. It was a challenge, and we had to make sure that we were providing a process that made them feel comfortable that they would have access to the ballot, and I believe we were successful.
Have you gotten any, threats, criticism, complaints, insults, or anything like that in the last 8 years?
That comes with the job. That's not unique to this election. I'm an umpire in the worst baseball game in the world, and I have to keep it fair. And so if you're not prepared for that, you shouldn't be an election official. Can you repeat your question? I couldn't quite hear you.
Sorry, when we know how the data is trending, will that be not until after 8 o'clock?
Well, we can't close the polls until 8, and if you're in line at 8 o'clock at any of those 30 sites, we're going to put a staffer at the end of the line. So there's no guarantee that those sites will close at 8. We will continue to process voters if they're in line at 8 o'clock. So it's difficult for me to predict exactly when, but it's going to be later than we anticipated.
Can you just quickly run down the logistics of what happens in this building in New York?
So there were 125 vote centers throughout Clark County. Each one of those locations has to return our flash drives so that we can read them into the system. We will verify that all cartridges have been received before we close out on our final unofficial report for this evening. All of those team leaders will come through the doors directly behind me, and they'll be bringing in paperwork, mail ballot drop-off boxes to be secured, and the flash drives that we need to read into the system. So all of that needs to be complete before we can put out our final unofficial.